So when we're constructing a chemical equation, the first things we need to do is identify the reactants and the products, write the formulas of the reactants on the left side of the arrow, and write the formulas of the products on the right side of the arrow. And the last step in writing a chemical equation is to balance. That means adjust the coefficients so that you have equal numbers of atoms of each kind on both sides of the arrow. So keep in mind, whenever you're asked to balance an equation, okay, you adjust the coefficients only. Once you've established the formulas of the reactants and products, do not alter those. Okay, so balancing means adjusting the coefficients. Now, most chemical equations are simple enough that you can do this by trial and error. Okay, so what you need to do, here are some tips that you can use. What you can do is first balance the elements that show up just once on either side of the arrow. Okay, those are easy to balance. And then another tip for balancing by trial and error is to just adjust the coefficients upwards. That means compare the left side and the right side. Okay, if you have fewer atoms on the left side, then adjust the coefficient of the left side upward to match the number of atoms on the right. So use the smallest possible whole numbers you can. You don't have to, but it's a good idea to start with the smallest possible whole number. Start with 1, and then 2, and then 3, and so on. And then every time you make an adjustment to a coefficient, always recheck the previous atoms that you have balanced, just to make sure. Okay, so let's illustrate that with this example right here. CH4 plus O2 yields CO2 plus water. This is what happens when you burn natural gas. It combines with oxygen to give you carbon dioxide and water. So your reactants are CH4 and O2. Products are carbon dioxide and H2. So let's start off by balancing the carbon, since it only shows up once on the left in CH4 and only shows up once on the right, CO2. Those are the ones you want to start with. So carbon, you have 1 coefficient of 1, subscript of 1. There's 1 on the left, 1 times 1. On the right, you have a coefficient of 1 for CO2, a subscript of 1 for CO2, 1 times 1. You also have 1 on the right. Your CO2, your carbon is balanced. Okay? Now let's take a look at hydrogen. Hydrogen also just shows up once on the left in CH4. It only shows up in one place on the right in H2O. Well, you've got 4 on the left. 1 times 4 is 4. Okay, so 4 on the left. And on the right, you have 1 times 2. That's only 2. So it's not balanced. So how do you balance it? You adjust your coefficient. You make this a 2. 2 times 2 is equal to 4. Okay? What does putting a 2 in front of the water mean? That simply means you are adding more water. So another way of writing this is, instead of writing 2H2O, you can say H2O plus H2O. So that you can simplify. You can just say 2 H2Os. All right? So our hydrogen is now balanced. Now let's recheck our carbon. Carbon, you still have. Okay, so let me erase this. Okay, carbon, you still have 1 on the left. 1 times 1. Okay. And on the right, you still have 1. 1 times 1. So carbon is still balanced. So finally, you check. So you've done carbon and hydrogen. Let's balance oxygen. To balance oxygen, okay. Why did I leave oxygen last? It's because it shows up once on the left, but it shows up twice on the right. Okay, and I already had this with a 2 here. Okay, so how do I balance my oxygen? Well, let's compare. On the left, I have 2. So that's 1 times 2. On the right, I have 1 times 2 here, and 2 times 1 there. There's a 1 there, so 2 plus 2 gives me 4 oxygens on the right. So oxygen is not balanced. I need more oxygen on the left, so I just increase the coefficient on the left to make my total on the left equal to 4. I change my coefficient to a 2. 2 times 2 would give me 4. So now my oxygen is balanced. And so I have a balanced equation. Let's clean this up. I have CH4 plus 2O2 yields. When you read the, by the way, when you read a chemical equation, when you see an arrow, you say the word yields. Okay? Carbon dioxide 1 carbon dioxide plus 2 waters, 2 H2O. That is your balance equation, doing it by trial and error adjustment of the coefficients.